and welcome to The Watchman. Well, it's a concept that's been pushed by every U.S. administration since Nixon. Both Republicans and Democrats have hailed it as the solution to all of the problems in the Middle East. It's called the two-state solution, and it has been a miserable failure. Secretary of State John Kerry is just the latest high-ranking U.S. official to pressure Israel to give up land for a Palestinian state, which would quickly become a terrorist state, resting on large areas of Israel's biblical heartland of Judea and Samaria, and controlling half of Jerusalem. Now, if you think this sounds like a bad idea for Israel, you're not alone. Caroline Glick is author of a groundbreaking new book called The Israeli Solution, a one-state plan for peace in the Middle East. Caroline is one of my favorite writers, and it was an honor to sit down with her recently and get her thoughts on what Israel needs to do. Check it out. Well, Caroline, thanks for joining us.
It's great to be on your show, Eric.
Yeah, always great to see you, and I love the new book. And we were talking before the interview, it is such an important asset in the war of ideas. Everyone, Caroline, talks about this two-state solution, whether it's Republicans, Democrats, even Israeli politicians. This has become an article of faith. The two-state solution is the way to go, a Palestinian state. Why are they so wrong?
They're so wrong because it is an article of faith. It's not based on reality. It's failed continuously for 90 years, but it's an easy path forward because the two-state solution is based on blaming the Jews, essentially. It says that all the problems of the Middle East, all of the problems of the Arab world, of the Islamic world, owed to the absence of a Palestinian state west of the Jordan River in land controlled by Israel. So who's at fault then? If everything is due to that and Israel is in control of the land, then Israel is responsible for everything. It's so convenient because if Israel is responsible for everything, you don't have to think about anything. You don't have to consider the internal pathologies of various Arab societies. You can just say, okay, Israel, give away Jerusalem, give away Judea and Samaria, and everything will be great. So it's very attractive. It offers a very easy option for policymakers. The fact that it doesn't work is apparently beside the point.
Yeah, and it's just the intellectual laziness.
Yes.
And the willful blindness, Caroline, to the realities on the ground. And you live in Israel, so you know the realities on the ground very well. And just so people know, Caroline is a Chicago native.
That's right.
Raised here in the U.S., so she knows both sides of the political aisle very well when it comes to America and Israel. So the title of the book is The Israeli Solution. This two-state solution, as you said, 90 years this has been going on, since 1970 in particular under Nixon.
Right.
Administration after administration, Democrat, Republican, it's failed. What is the Israeli solution?
Well, as it works out, the only thing that works in the Middle East is Israel. The only liberal democracy in the Middle East is Israel. The only country that deters radical regimes from acquiring weapons of mass destruction is Israel. The only country that deters terrorist organizations from acquiring territory or using it as a base for terrorist attacks is Israel. I mean, just think when Israeli naval commandos intercepted an Iranian shipment of long-range missiles to Hamas in Gaza. What other country would have done that? None. So Israel works. Israel works from the perspective of morality, of values, of liberal democracy, and strategically. So you go with what works. Israel is a solution. Israeli power, the stronger Israel is, the more stable the region is. The more capable Israel is of defending itself, the better off everybody is. And the more Israel is in charge, the better people's lives are from a civil liberties perspective. So that's why we have to go away from an attempt to establish another terrorist state in the region as if we didn't have enough, and say, let's strengthen Israel. Israel is the solution.
Yeah, it's interesting, Caroline. You make the point in the book that most Palestinians would rather be under Israeli control than Palestinian Authority control, which is a very interesting wrinkle here. Same with Israeli Arabs. But Judea and Samaria, the so-called West Bank, we've done a lot on this show talking about how this is the biblical heartland, of course, but also such a vital strategic security area for Israel. Talk about the security concerns of making Judea and Samaria and the eastern half of Jerusalem into a Palestinian state.
So there are two aspects to this. One is that You know, if I think that if I'm arguing that the answer is to make Israel as strong as possible, what the two-state plan actually does is make Israel incapable of defending itself. Because without Judea and Samaria, and with a divided Jerusalem, Israel's borders become indefensible. You just can't defend either from penetration by terrorists or by foreign armies invading your land, because you're not in a position to prevent that from happening. So, you know, that's one aspect of it, that you're turning Israel from a strategic ally of the first order into a strategic basket case that lives at the favor of others, which is a disaster in and of itself. The other aspect to it is that, you know, everybody talks about demography, that Israel is going to destroy itself demographically.
President Obama loves to talk about that.
All the time, around the clock. But the fact of the matter is that the demographic data he's using are lies. They're based on a falsified Palestinian census from 1997 that inflated the number of Palestinians by 50%. It would be as if the U.S. Census Bureau had just added 162 million Americans that never existed.
And you lay this out in the book so everyone knows the numbers are there. Caroline lays it out in meticulous detail.
Thanks. But the real demographic problem would be a Palestinian state that has the right to determine its own immigration policy. We'd get millions of foreign Arabs moving into this area that Israel can't defend against, who have been marinated in genocidal Jew hatred in UN-run refugee camps that are controlled by terrorist organizations from Al-Qaeda to Hamas to Hezbollah and onward and upward from there.
And we've seen Iran, Caroline, set up shop in Gaza, in southern Lebanon. Why would they not set up shop in Judea and Samaria under Palestinian control?
Exactly. Of course they would.
Yeah.
So this would just be a base for destroying the rump Jewish state that would remain after such a plan was implemented. And of course, just as Gaza has become a hub of global jihad, so Judea and Samaria would win. And that doesn't advance any possible American interest.
No, it's madness. And I'm glad you brought up the American interests. For an American viewer watching at home, why should they oppose this idea of a two-state solution?
Because it weakens the United States. Look, when you have decided that the real problem in the Middle East is that Israel is too big, it stops you from thinking about the Middle East. It's so absurd. I mean, when John Kerry comes to Israel a dozen times in a year to try to push Israel to cough up Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria to Palestinian terrorists, and in the meantime, the entire region is exploding with civil war and violence, and this is what he's concentrating on. It shows that there's something terribly wrong with the way that American policymakers are viewing the region.
It's almost a mental disorder, it feels like. Because as you said, this so-called Arab Spring is going on, had nothing to do with Israel, but these American policymakers believe in this theory of linkage. You give the Palestinians a state, the Middle East will magically be a bastion of peace.
Exactly, and so think about what the debilitating impact of this kind of non-thought has on America's ability to understand the region and to make coherent policies that actually advance American national security interests. It destroys that capacity.
Yeah. So with the Israeli solution in your book, get a little bit more into the nuts and bolts of that, Caroline, what you're proposing, what would happen to Palestinians who are living in Judea and Samaria right now.
So it would be the same thing that happened to Arabs who lived in Jerusalem in 1967 when Israel applied its laws to unified Jerusalem after the Six-Day War. The same thing that happened to the Druze in the Golan Heights when Israel applied its laws to those areas in 1981. They would be granted automatic permanent residency status, which gives them the same legal standing as Israeli citizens in all ways except voting in Knesset elections, and they would have a path toward citizenship as permanent residents. So that if they abide by the criterion of Israel's citizenship law, they would be able to become Israeli citizens. And again, this goes back to the whole question of demography. And what I show in my book is that demography is actually one of Israel's strategic assets. Israeli Jewish women are have the highest fertility rate in the Western world by far. Israel's an outlier with over 3 children per woman among Israeli Jews, and that's actually higher than Palestinian Arab women in Judea and Samaria.
Which have declined, right, in recent years?
Collapsed,
their birth rates,
just along with the rest of the
Very
Islamic world. And so, you're talking, and we've had convergence with Israel's Arab population. So, all of the numbers that we've been fed for the past decade and a half, basically, have been untrue. And the real data point to the fact that there is an alternative path that is safer, that's better for Israel, for the Palestinians, and for the world as a whole.
Yeah. Caroline, last question. Do you see your proposal and your view on this, do you see it gaining momentum, number one, among the Israeli public, and number two, among the Israeli government, including the current Israeli government under Prime Minister Netanyahu?
So it's very interesting because the fact that the demographic data of the Palestinians, that it was false, came to light for the first time in 2005. And it took several years to percolate throughout Israeli society, but now that it has, you have over half of Likud Knesset faction supporting the application of Israeli law to all or parts of Judea and Samaria. You have the Jewish Home Party, which is a major coalition partner in the government, whose entire Knesset faction supports this.
Naftali Bennett.
Exactly,
Yeah.
And so you're looking at a completely different political dynamic in Israel. In the current Knesset session, we've had 2 bills introduced calling for the application of Israeli law to areas of Judea and Samaria. So yes, this is having a profound impact on Israeli political thinking. And the reason why I wrote this book is because I think it's well nigh time for us to begin this discussion in the United States as well.
Yeah, and we're going to keep it going here.
Thanks.
And you've started something here big time, and
Thank
this is
you.
for an American audience. It's a great thing. Caroline, thank you so much. Be sure to pick up Caroline's book, The Israeli Solution. Folks, to must read. It will give you the ideological ammo you need to defend Israel, defend Judea and Samaria. Also, check out Caroline's column twice a week on the Jerusalem Post, JerusalemPost.com. Coming up, my interview with Naftali Bennett of the Jewish Home Party. Stay tuned.
Do you have an idea for an invention or a new product? Brian and Alice Jagosh, the inventors of the halftime drill driver, did. They invented a power drill attachment that lets you drill, flip, and drive in seconds. Brian and Alice licensed their invention to the company that brought you the Snuggie, and it's now selling in major retailers nationwide. Look for the Invent Help K-band on the package. If you have an invention that you would like to try to patent and submit to companies for possible review and want free information on how InventHelp may be able to assist you, call now. InventHelp is America's largest inventor service company with sales offices in more than 60 cities nationwide. Call InventHelp today for free information. Our clients made a financial gain with their invention, but this is just their individual result. Brian and Alice's experience is not typical, as only a very small number of inventions are licensed or sold in stores.
For your free inventors information, call 1-800-559-8567. That's 1-800-559-8567.
If you had a choice between going bald and a full head of hair, which would you choose? Advances in medical science have resulted in the world's first and only permanent solution to hair loss.
Yes!
You wash it, you cut it. It's your own real, naturally growing hair. When it comes to hair restoration, no one in the world has more experience than Bosley. The results look completely natural and are affordable on nearly any budget. But the entire process can't be explained in 60 brief seconds. So to find out more about this clinically proven and permanent solution to hair loss, call now to receive your free no-obligation information kit. It'll answer all of your questions about hair loss and hair restoration. Plus, we'll also send you this $250 gift certificate just for calling. Every day you wait, you're losing more hair. So don't put it off any longer. You owe it to yourself to find out the facts. Choose hair. Choose Bosley.
Call 800-868-9957. That's 800-868-9957.
Welcome back. Well, he is a rising star in Israeli politics, and some call him the voice of Israel's settlement movement. Naftali Bennett has a fascinating life story, and while he's now Israel's Minister of the Economy, even bigger things may soon lie ahead for him. I sat down with Bennett recently to discuss some of the challenges Israel is facing. Take a look. Minister Bennett, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, it's great being here.
So you have a fascinating backstory. Look, you have the American influences. You were an entrepreneur, headed up an elite commando unit in Israel. Why politics?
Well, the Second Lebanon War erupted, and I was called in to command a unit, search and destroy mission of finding missile launchers of Hezbollah that they're trying to shoot at my parents' home in Haifa and destroy the missile launchers before. That war changed my life. At that point, I decided not to come back to the business world and high tech, which really is my passion, but that I actually have to do something for my country. And the reason is, suddenly I realized, together with my whole generation, that we're in an ocean, we're surrounded by an ocean of totalitarian, radical Islam regimes that want to wipe us off this earth. And understood that while I thought that Israel can be taken for granted, it can't. And we have to fight day in and day out to be this beacon of freedom in the region. So I decided to enter the political realm.
Talk about the biblical significance of Judea and Samaria and what that means to the Jewish people.
Judea and Samaria is ours. It's been ours for 3,800 years. You know, when I walk around Judea and Samaria, on the very same trails that Abraham, Isaac, Jacob walked, you see the same names, Bethel, Hebron, where the patriarchs and matriarchs are all buried. It's been ours forever, and I'm part of the Jewish people, of this eternal chain, and I'm one link in the chain, and I feel that it's my obligation to bequeath to my children and grandchildren our land. And no one gives up our land, and that's really the core. Beyond that, I think anyone who's got any mind can see that any time that we hand over a piece of land to the Arabs, they immediately thereafter begin shooting us from that very piece of land, from Lebanon, from Judea and Samaria cities, from Gaza Strip. We pull out, Iran comes in, and they start shooting at us. But first and foremost, it's been our home for thousands of years.
I was going to ask you, Minister, talk a bit more about the security significance of Judea and Samaria. Look, you stand on the mountains of Samaria, you can see Ben Gurion Airport. Talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, people sometimes don't understand. Israel is a very narrow country. From the Mediterranean to the so-called Green Line, it's 9 miles. That's about 10 minutes car ride. That's the whole width of the smaller Israel. Now, Judea and Samaria, what would supposedly become the Palestinian state, is a big mountain, 1,000 meters high. Smaller Israel, the pre-67 lines, is right under. So imagine giving this highland over to the Palestinians, and we'd be really controlled by them. I've got 4 kids, Yoni, Jonathan, Michal, Abigail, and David, 8, 6, 4, and 2. I'm not going to put them in harm's way ever, and I'm going to fight for them. I'm fighting for my life, and we need to protect ourselves. If there's anything I've learned from the past several decades, no one's going to be out there for us. We got to defend ourselves. We cannot outsource our security to anyone else.
Right now, the world pressure is intense, the international pressure on Israel to negotiate, dialogue, diplomacy. Do you think at the end of the day, diplomacy and dialogue can work with this regime in Tehran?
I think the only thing that'll work is tremendous pressure of sanctions, of economic sanctions. At the end of the day, Iran has a supreme goal of obtaining a nuclear weapon. That's why they have 19,000 centrifuges. You know that if you want to use nuclear energy, you don't need one centrifuge. There's many, many states in the world, including Canada and European states, that have nuclear energy. You don't need centrifuges for that. When you have 19,000 centrifuges that can spin enough uranium for a nuclear bomb in 6 weeks, that means you're out to obtain a bomb. What our goal is for Iran to dismantle this machine, and that would afford the West about 3 years of notice if they try and break out to obtain a bomb. If they can retain this machine, if they're allowed to retain this machine while easing the sanctions, it means they're a threshold state, and that's something we cannot live with.
And Mr. Bennett, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Really appreciate it. Up next, video from my recent Middle East speech to Christians United for Israel's student leadership. Stick around.
Attention sleep apnea patients. Are you tired of the expense and hassle of getting your CPAP and BiPAP supplies? Are you fed up with dealing with ill-fitting, leaking, or worn-out masks and straps? Are you worried about the effects that unsanitary tubes, cushions, and filters have on your health? If you said yes to any of these questions, Allied Medical Supply Network has the solution to your problems. You could qualify to have your supplies regularly delivered right to your door at little or no cost to you. That's right, no more inconvenience, no worn-out masks and straps, no more unsanitary equipment, just restful sleep. Call Allied Medical Supply Network today to determine if you may qualify to receive your fresh, brand-name supplies at little or no cost. Don't delay. Call us now to see if you are eligible to save money on regular delivery of your CPAP and BiPAP supplies. Call 1-800-815-9947. That's 1-800-815-9947. Or go to cpapsupplyhelpline.com.
Announcing an important breakthrough in healthcare that can benefit everyone. If you or anyone you love needs affordable health insurance, regardless of a pre-existing medical condition, call Quick Insurance 123 today and get the immediate relief you deserve. Quick Insurance 123 was created to provide affordable health insurance to all uninsured Americans, with or without pre-existing conditions. This is not a discount card. This is a real insurance program that lets you choose from many affordable health plans, with access to doctors, hospitals, emergency services, and more. So call the number on your screen now and get the health coverage you need, just for calling. As a special bonus, we'll send you a free prescription savings card that could save you up to 85% on your prescriptions. That's right, you could save up to 85% on your prescriptions just for calling. Call Quick Insurance 123 to find out how you can get affordable health insurance and receive your free prescription savings card just for calling. Don't wait. Getting a free quote is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Call today.
And welcome back. Well, Christians United for Israel, or CUFI, is the largest pro-Israel group in America, with some 1.6 million members. Pastor John Hagee has built a powerhouse for the pro-Israel movement, and I was honored recently to address the leadership of CUFI on campus in San Antonio. I discussed Iran, the Muslim Brotherhood, and the importance for Christians to stand with the Jewish people. Take a look. At the end of the day, it's a spiritual battle. It's a spiritual struggle. These are evil forces that are gathered against Israel and the Jewish people and America. Evil. It's a spiritual battle. This is the God of Israel. This is God's land and God's people. This is not child's play. God's land and God's people. And that reward, I don't even have to tell you what Pastor Hagee always says so eloquently, the book of Genesis, I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who curse you. Pretty simple. I want to be blessed on that level. You will be blessed if you do this. Might not be some sort of material gain. You will feel good. You will feel joy, peace in your heart, because when you're touching Israel, you're touching the apple of God's eye. Nothing more serious. Little inspiration, something I live by, because you're going into the lion's den, quite literally, especially on college campuses. Psalm 91 has been huge for me. Huge in this fight. I have it on my desk at work. Huge. Let me read a little bit from it, quoting a little bit of scripture. And listen closely. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely He will save you from the fowler's snare and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with His feathers, and under His wings you will find refuge. God. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror of night, or Iran, or the Muslim Brotherhood, or the campus radicals, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. If you say, the Lord is my refuge, and you make the Most High your dwelling, no harm will overtake you, no disaster will come near your tent. God will give His angels charge over you. If you are in this room, you love God, which means you have to love Israel. The two are inseparable. So my advice to you is remember Psalm 91. Go out, be bold, be watchmen and women on the wall for such a time as this. If God is with us, who can stand against us? God is with Israel. God is with the Jewish people. So God bless you. Shalom. Thank you for listening to me. And do not hold your peace. You inspire me. Keep it up. Thank you for what you are doing. You are heroes. Thank you. God bless you. Coming up, some final thoughts from CUFI student leaders. Stick around.
The American Bible Challenge is back. Premiering May 22nd at 8/7 Central, Jeff Foxworthy is ready to play.
The whole family's gonna love it.
Kurt Franklin's gonna sway.
Are you ready?
And you'll see the Bible in a whole new way.
Don't I look chic? That was impressive.
An all-new season premieres Thursday, May 22nd at 8/7 Central, only on Game Show Network.
Pat Boone here with some good news you can trust. Today, our faith, families, and our freedoms are under attack. Polls say 2 out of 3 Americans no longer trust government. A stalled economy, weakening dollar, and politicians willing to steal money from our children to waste on unfixable problems. So, whom can you trust? Well, our money still says in God we trust. But do we? Or have we quietly allowed the things we hold sacred to be stolen by the enemies of traditional values? Today, our government spends almost twice its income, running up a tab for future generations into the hundreds of trillions. How can you stop this from happening to your family? Well, it's all covered in a fantastic new book, The Great Withdrawal by Craig Smith and Dr. Lowell Ponte. Every American needs to read this book. Why don't you call now for a free copy of The Great Withdrawal? It's the simple truth you can trust.
The American Bible Challenge is back. Premiering May 22nd at 8/7 Central, Jeff Foxworthy is ready to play.
The whole family's gonna love it.
Kurt Franklin's gonna sway.
Are you ready?
And you'll see the Bible in a whole new way.
Don't I look chic? That was impressive.
An all-new season premieres Thursday, May 22nd at 8/7 Central, only on Game Show Network.
Welcome back. Well, following my speech to Christians United for Israel's student leadership, we had the chance to talk to some CUFI students about why they have chosen a very difficult road, supporting Israel on America's college campuses, which are a hotbed of anti-Israel hatred. Take a look.
We're doing historical work, Christians working with Jews. This has never happened in thousands of years. Christians supporting the state of Israel and standing beside our Hebraic roots and the people who are in their natural homeland, seeing the students stepping out and making a difference. It's world-changing.
It puts a lot of passion and drive that I have for this into a reality. You know, it's more important than my final exam or more important than me necessarily graduating because I'm doing something biblical.
Folks, these CUFI students are on the front lines, and I encourage you to support them at cufioncampus.org. Well, thanks for joining us this week, and until next week, God bless you, and remember, never hold your peace.